Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown between two fearsome competitors. On the left hand side, representing the Vampire Counts and LP, we have Twilight Harbinger up against the Glorious Feeder and his mighty Dowie Throng. Should be a really fun game. These are two top tier players that we've had on the channel before and in some tournaments on live streams, two true champs. Now for the forces of the Vampire Counts in the front line, as is tradition, of course we have a ton of unhappy, uncheerful, but pretty cheap zombies. These guys are meat shields here to absorb initial blasting charges, thunder of fire and the like, as well as slowly drain and tear down the dwarfs through sheer attrition. In the secondary battle line, we have a bucket ton of Graveguard with great weapons. Of course, an absolutely fantastic pick here. They are anti-infantry, armor piercing, all the good stuff you want to do to deal with dwarfs. One of which is going to be the Sternsman as well, regiment of renowned Graveguard, who have that glorious regeneration. Looks like we have a nice kind of ghostly, ethereal flank here on the right-hand side. 2 units of Cane Wraiths. Now, these guys do magic damage, which makes them a little bit worse against dwarfs in some aspects. At the same time, though, dwarfs do lack magic damage themselves. They're very sticky and have pretty decent AEP to counteract that magic damage that they indeed do. Getting into the back line, they could be an absolute hassle for the dwarfs to deal with. Up in the skies, we have a ton of Fellbats, and it looks like on the flanks as well. Nope, it is just Graveguard and zombies. So up in the skies, we have a mighty Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, and this model is crazy gangster with his undeathly dragon there. Coming in, of course, with Helm of Discord, very good against the dwarves who like a tightly packed formation, often boxing when it comes to the Vampire Counts. He's also coming in with Raised Dead, the Dance Macabre, as well as Invocation of Nehek, and of course the Big Breath of the Dragon. In the back, we have the Black Coach, another magic dealing unit, but the Black Coach has fantastic mass and can really push through Dowie lines without being stopped by too much. Now for the forces of the dwarfs here, it looks like in the front line we do have a mixture of Longbeards as well as miners with blast and charges. Of course the miners will be able to clear through that chaff incredibly quickly, and Longbeards hold for an absolute age. It looks like we have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass who are going to be assisting them here. In the back lines, we have a couple of units of Hammerers, one on either flank, and Hammerers are a unit I'm really excited to see perform here. It's a matchup where I think they could do relatively well, and for the most part, Hammerers are kind of unseen in multiplayer, at least from what I have witnessed. We've got 3 units of Thunderers. Actually, is it just 2? No, just the 2 units of Thunderers, which I think is a bit better. Not too much to protect, but sandwiched between them is going to be some Iron Drakes with Trollhammer Torpedo. A decent amount of armor-piercing long-range damage there to help deal with some of the larger threats that the Vampire Counts can bring. Wrapping up the build, we have the Grumbling Guard, Regiment of Renowned Longbeards in the back left here. These guys do have some really nice stat buffs, as well as the Old Grumblers giving extra vigor to nearby troops. They also have immune to psychology and encourage. We have Dragonback Slayers holding the rear down, and for a hero core, it looks like we do have a engineer down here on foot, a master one in fact, and he's coming completely naked apart from the Fiery Ring of Thori, which is a really nice breath/tear attack, which could be really useful at clearing through chaff, so it's obviously why he's brought that here today. And we have Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, the legendary warrior of old himself, coming with a flash bomb, Foe Seeker. Grombrindle has no fear, as well as a rune Helm of Zufbar, plus 12 leadership, an item you don't see terribly often, but in this matchup of a load of scary creatures, it is certainly wise to bring it. Of course, his smoke bomb as well allows him to pin in Vargulfs, Terragooses, any of the large creatures or chariots which can threaten the Dowie forces. So 2 really awesome builds, and it's going to be a bit of a fight to the death here, I feel, and an absolute scrap. You can see the Master Engineer taking first blood, gaining 7 kills. Focusing down Graveguard with great weapons is an awesome pick, and it looks like the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are letting loose a roar of the battle cry and charging headlong into the zombies, who they should be able to clear through rather quickly. Blast and charges are being launched in, trying to hit the Graveguard, which of course is a better target than those pesky zombies, and not too much damage on those first few volleys, unfortunately for them. In the centre as well, we have miners falling back, trying to get the protection of Hammerers. Now in comes the Black Coach streaming into the back line, but is instantly hit with a flash bomb, lowering that speed by 72%, and the Hammerers are here, as well as some miners, and that Black Coach is going to take huge punishment. It looks like the Thunderers, as well as the Iron Drake Trollhammer Torpedoes, are lighting it up. In comes a Fiery Ring, destroying those Cane Wraiths. Massive damage in the back line, but down the Black Coach goes. A huge early loss here for the Vampire Counts. Fellbats have now swooped into the back line on top of the Thunderers, but it was slightly too late to save the Black Coach, unfortunately for them. In the back line, Longbeards as well as Dragonback Slayers are responding to the Fellbat and Summon threat. The Vampire Counts are threatening to try and save the Thunderers, but this unit on the left is in big trouble. The Cane Wraiths have emerged and appeared on top of them. There's not going to be too much here which should be able to drag them down, and a big fat breath attack comes down the line. Unfortunately for the Counts there, the Longbeards were kind of split into 2 units almost, and it went right down the middle. Let's have a nice little cinematic look through the front line as Longbeards and Dwarf Warriors hold back a never-ending tide of death. But they're doing a pretty good job of it so far. We can see the Blood Dragon Vampire Lords hunting down those Trollhammer torpedoes and dropping a glorious Helm of Discord. Longbeards certainly not going to be able to be good enough bodyguards to protect against such a ferocious beast. Thunderers in the centre pocket have managed to stabilise themselves and move away from the rear attackers here before launching shots into the Graveguard, which would be a nice pick as currently Grombrindle is on by himself, holding back 3 units. Hammer's not doing too bad as well, up to 77 kills here in the centre, and over on the flank we have a lovely Dwarven sandwich with some undead in the middle. These Hammers will be crushing the Graveguard from the rear. Master Engineer is continuously firing shots into the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, trying to rake up some good value. And you can see every shot is going to do decent damage, but that's not going to help these Iron Drake Trollhammer torpedoes, who are currently getting absolutely annihilated. Now, between Dwarfs and Vampire Counts, this is the really messy stage of can the Counts fully shut down that back line and turn it into a grindfest, or will the Dwarfs be able to stabilise? It looks like so far 2 Thunderers are going to be able to rescue themselves and come back to help assist. In the front line, the Grumbling Guard are being forced into service, as a lot of the frontline miners have disappeared at this point. Hammer is going strong though, 131 kills, going toe-to-toe with the elite of the enemy forces, but more summons are afoot and coming down to put pressure on the Dowie front line. Over on the left-hand flank here, Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, has charged headlong in to the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, popping down a flash bomb to pin him in place. And yes, there is a zombie summon, but it looks like they are stunned by the awesomeness of such a Dwarf, who's getting some glorious hacks in on top of that Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. And the Thunderers are unleashing hell. The Dragonback Slayers need to get their booties waddling, come over here and surround him to try and finish him off for good. But in the back lines, Cane Wraiths have emerged once more, terrifying some of these Thunderers away, and now they can pounce on that second unit. Or the Blood Dragon himself may come in with a big fat breath attack going directly down the rank here. Ooh, that's pretty nasty stuff, but it could have been worse. It kind of focuses attention on one area. Trollhammers are now unleashing death upon the now healing Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. In the front line, it looks like things are slowly getting mopped up by the Warriors of Dragonfire, pass fighting side by side by the Grumbling Guard, the elite of the elite, doing a pretty good job just tearing their way through zombies and Graveguard alike. That unit of Hammers, who did flank earlier, has flanked once more, pinning in place a ton of zombies as well as Sternsmen and Graveguard, doing a good job clobbering them from behind. But one big problem the Dwarf forces are having is shutting down this Vampire Lord, who is floating around the battle, destroying Dwarven units left, right and centre. In the background, we can see Cane Wraiths are finishing off Thunderers. Really good micromanagement here by the Vampire Count player. He certainly doesn't want them to come back. They're one of the only answers the Dwarves have at this point to dealing with the Blood Dragon. Miners with blasting charges have coded in some more shots onto a summoned unit of zombies, trying to protect the Iron Drake Trollhammer torpedoes. Still 7 of these guys left. That's a lot of punch still left in one unit. The Master Engineer continues to do some pretty accurate shooting into the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, up to 30 kills himself as well. It looks like the Dragonback Slayers have committed to the front line, which I think is a bit of a mistake here. They need to dog the shadow here of the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord to try and pin him in place every time he lands. Grombrindle and the Hammerers doing a good job of surround the enemy along the front line. Balance power is currently Dwarf favoured, and I can certainly see why. However, on this flank, a mixture of Cane Wraiths and Graveguard are going to break down the Dowie resistance before flooding in once more to behind the enemy lines. But just as I say that, another fantastic use of the ring, and does some pretty decent damage to the Cane Wraiths all round, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to save those long bits. Graveguard going down to the mighty forces of Grombrindle, as well as some few remaining Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, so they do finally break here. The Grumbling Guard needs to get a little bit closer to boost up the morale of these Dwarven folk. Looks like the poor engineer has picked a fight with the wrong Angry Dragon, who is coming in to try and do some cycle charging and finish him off for good, but instead decides to bounce out to the left and fully break the back of the Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes, which is a really good shout, as once again, them and the Thunderers are the best answer to this flying dragon, as they can pressure it from afar, force it to land up against the stout Dowie folk. The remainder of the Vampire Count's infantry is completely surrounded at this point. Hammer's up to 120 kills. Getting in here and hammering these lads, doing some fantastic work, as well as the Grumbling Guard holding the line, but zombie summons are going to be bogging them down and slowly tiring them. Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is going to be coming for a big fat breath attack onto the Master Engineer here, but not doing an insane amount of damage, a decent amount however, and now he's going to land and this Engineer is doomed. Helm of Discord is popped and it looks like he's going to be terrified away. I certainly do not blame him. However, a flash bomb does go down as Grombrindle, the White Dwarf, answers the cries of his folk and charges headlong in to the Dragon Vampire Lord, who certainly knows his mistake here and is going to be desperately trying to flee from the vengeful Dwarf. Cane Wraiths are going to be able to float over here and mop up that Master Engineer, but he's done a pretty decent job all round. The infantry fight has been won by the Dwarfs on this flank, but over here you can see the Vampire Counts have been successful. It's a very, very tight battle so far. Looks like we can see some more zombies coming down to once again bog down the Hammerers as well as the Grumbling Guard to allow the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord free reign to come in and try to snipe Grombrindle. But Grombrindle is so tanky and he's unbreakable. He cares not if you're a gigantic terror-causing dragon. He's seen worse in his years, and he's going to be beating back this dragon, forcing it up into the skies, and you can see it's even getting relatively near its healing cap at this point. So instead, good use from the Vampire Count player, just going to use that mobility to cycle charge other units in the Dwarven roster and ignore the White Dwarf for now, although Grombrindle has no fear, has been popped at a pretty key moment here, rallying these forces and making them unbreakable. Graveguard going toe-to-toe with the Grumbling Guard. It's going to be a decent trade for the Graveguard all round there. And the distance, once again, fantastic micro of these Cane Wraiths. Use them to chase off and completely shatter Dwarven resistance. If we have a little look around the battlefield, it is simply what you see is what you get in this tiny little blob. Not many men left on both sides, and this is often how I see this matchup going. Huge damage dealt early on to both sides, and an absolute grind fest. Foe Seeker has been popped on Grombrindle as he desperately tries to catch up with his prey here, but the Cane Wraith's going to come in, do a lovely little surround on Grombrindle and pin him in place, but he does magic damage, so he certainly should be focusing down the Cane Wraiths here. Every swing shall slay a mythical enemy. Looks like the Hammers have finally been broken. They have been hit by Helm of Discord and terrified away, and all of a sudden, all of the Dwarven infantry has started to run for the hills. Even the Slayers have been slain down to the last man. Going for a nice vengeful death, though, up against a mighty dragon who has hit his healing cap now. Hammers have fled. We have some miners returning to the field, but the Grumbling Guard are breaking. You know you're in big trouble. Grombrindle, with the Helm of Discord, isn't going to be able to take on all of this infantry by himself, but the mighty Dowey Lord is standing firm for now, hoping that the rallying calls shall bring his troops back, and it looks like they are answering the call here. The Dwarves are rallying to their king. Miners of Blast and Chariots come in for a heroic charge, pushing straight past that dragon as if it was nothing, and into the hide of the Graveguard and zombies, cleaving rotting flesh with mighty pickaxes. Although they pop in for a second before shattering, I don't really blame them. Hammerers, though, a little bit more elite. They are indeed the King's bodyguards, are attempting to charge in as well to rescue the White Dwarf, and it looks like they are going to be able to stand in front of the Blood Dragon at least for a short time before a few more of them are clobbered to death, and the last ones are running off to their homes to take their Slayer oath for abandoning the White Dwarf. And for the first time, the balance of power is in favour of the Vampire Counts, but a lovely flash bomb comes in, very well timed, and Grombrindle is going to be going toe-to-toe here with his mighty nemesis. Although, where is Grombrindle? Oh, there he is, just covered in blood. Beating back the dragon once more. We're seeing some good cycle charging all round from the entire game, to be honest, from the Counts player. Grombrindle should be able to deal with the majority of the troops left on the board. It's just, can he survive long enough to finish them off? It is incredibly close. Graveguard are very close to crumbling at this point, and the Cane Wraiths are done for. This battle has come down to 15 troops on 1, and I think it could come down to a 1v1 action as Grombrindle slays yet another Graveguard, and these guys are minus 22 leadership at this point. Certainly going to be crumbling and going into dust. 127 kills, though. They've certainly done very well. And a big fat Helm of Discord comes in. That's what the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord was waiting for. Grombrindle down to 382 health, but the dragon only 630. If he can pop one more flash bomb and survive this Helm, perhaps there is hope. And I think I made a mistake here. The dragon looks like he's going to be retreating. He should definitely stay and fight while the Helm is on. Looks like he may have just moved some animations there, so he is going to try to take this fight. But looks like Grombrindle does go down, with the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord being the only combatant left, alongside his one loyal Graveguard soldier who was crumbling into dust. What a crazy end to the game, and a Pyrrhic victory. You can't get much more Pyrrhic than that. One unit remaining. which is insane. Lovely pick victory there for the Vampire Counts. Massive shout out to Twilight Harbinger for sending this one in to me, and well played to him as well as Glorious Feeder. A fantastic game on both sides. It was really swung back and forth. Before we do break down the units here, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. We do drop content every single day. If you want to get involved in the tournament scene or any events I host, or just chill out with a load of cool people, feel free to join my Discord. There's a link down below. You can also send replays there as well via the replays for casting tab. If you want to support the channel in any other way, I do have links to Patreon down below, and you can become a member of the channel. Anyway, awesome stuff. Let's go through the Dwarf Force first. So the Hammers are one unit I really wanted to speak about because I love them thematically. They're so cool. Gigantic hammer-wielding bodyguards of the Dwarven folk. How did they fare? Well, 183 kills is some insane chaff clearing potential, but also managed to mop up a lot of Graveguard. 12,000 damage dealt is very impressive, and 1,065 damage value is also very good. This unit, a little bit less, 910 damage value, but 11,000 damage dealt, and I think this is certainly a matchup where they can perform rather well, because the lack of shooting from the opponent. The one problem the Hammerers have for the most part is they're an aggressive unit in a defensive faction, so they don't really synergize too well with the rest of the Dwarven folk, but they can be used here quite well. There's no range to target them down, and if your opponent wants to try and snipe them with large creatures, that is fine. They will still do a lot of damage back, but they are rather expensive, so I'm not even sure if these guys paid for themselves. They need to double check how much they cost, but I think it's 1,200, so maybe didn't pay for themselves quite enough here, but still a very good performance by them, and you don't really expect a unit to necessarily get all its value back. There's often games where, only one or two will actually make that. So still very good performance by them, as well as the Grumbling Guard, and a decent solid Dowie front line doing some really nice damage. It's good to see such elite troops in action. The Jungback Slayers as well got a ton of damage value as well as damage dealt. I think the one problem Glorious Feeder had is he needed to keep them a little bit further back at times to help protect those Thunderers and Trollhammers, which is really hard to do and far easier to say in hindsight, but he did commit them to the front line a little early. Thunderers struggling in one aspect. This unit kind of got forced off early, but the other one doing fantastic damage, doing 1,115 damage value, most of which was on top of key targets such as the Dragon itself. Same with the Trollhammer torpedoes. The damage they dealt was really good, but they just needed a little bit more protection. If they had kept at least one more of these units firing consistently for a little while longer, the Dwarfs certainly had this one in the bag. The Master Engineer was an absolute inspired pick with the ring to do that lovely kind of tier attack with the fire, getting 8,000 damage dealt, 2,300 damage value. I think this is a really lovely pick to counteract ethereal units, but at the same time, if you wanted to drop it on Graveguard, it also would have done some glorious damage. So lovely inspired pick there by Glorious Feeder. Certainly something I'm going to be trying out myself more often. And Grombrindle's such a champ, of course. 11,000 damage dealt, 3,700 damage value is really awesome stuff. Now for Twilight Harbinger, absolute masterful play with the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, getting some really good value. A little bit unlucky on some of those breath attacks where they went straight down rather than along the line, but despite that, still got a whopping 12,000 damage dealt and 2,890 damage value is very good. Now the one weakness Twilight had, of course, was losing the Black Coach early on. If he had managed to keep this guy alive into the late game, he certainly would have been able to tear out a lot more troops and consistently cycle charge, because we saw how good he was cycle charging with just the one unit. Imagine if he had two of them. Apart from that, the Graveguard did a really fantastic job as always. If we look along the line, all of them getting pretty much between 800 to 1,500 damage dealt. One unit struggling a little bit more here, which of course they get surrounded by those hammers initially. Fellbats as well, not getting much value, but they did their job, harassing those Thunderers, forcing them back and stretching thin that Slayer protection. The Cane Race, a really interesting pick all round. You can see some of them doing some fantastic damage dealt and damage value. In fact, both units, and they worked really well as a backline harass tool. I've often seen people try to use these in the front line up against Dwarfs, but they do take a long time to grind through the enemy. So I'm a massive fan of this tactic. I use them as a backline harass tool to scare off Thunderers, apply pressure to them, and they're just so sticky for the Dwarfs to deal with. It took Grombrindle himself to bring these guys low. Anyway guys, hope you had a fun time. Until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.